They called her the Invisible Girl. For 21 years, Aelith Varn survived on scraps and silence in the Thornwood Pack, invisible to everyone except those who needed someone to torment. She was the wolf-less servant, the broken bloodline, the girl whose own shadow seemed ashamed to follow her. But they didn't know what slept inside her veins. When Calyx Thorn, the golden heir of Thornwood, discovers she's his fated mate, he doesn't embrace her. He destroys her in front of the entire kingdom. He calls her filth. He casts her into the frozen dark to die. But there was someone watching from the shadows. Someone everyone had forgotten. The quiet brother, the exiled son, the Alpha King. And when he steps forward to claim what Calyx threw away, the entire world will learn a devastating truth. The girl they called Invisible was never meant to kneel. She was meant to reign. The Thornwood Pack estate sprawled across the eastern valley like a sleeping beast, its stone walls older than memory, its towers clawing at a perpetually gray sky. The territory was vast and prosperous, ruled by Alpha Aldrich Thorn and his golden son Calyx, the heir apparent who carried himself as though the moon goddess herself had carved him from starlight. Aelith Varn had never seen the inside of the main hall. She knew only the servants' quarters, a maze of cramped corridors beneath the estate, where the Omegas slept in shifts on straw pallets and ate whatever the kitchen staff deemed too stale for the ranked wolves. At 21, Aelith was older than most unmated females, and the absence of her wolf made her an anomaly, a defect. A target. She was on her knees in the eastern corridor, scrubbing mud from the flagstones with a brush that had lost half its bristles, when the boots appeared. Polished leather, silver buckles. Aelith didn't need to look up. She knew those boots. You missed a spot. Ravenna Cade's voice dripped with practiced cruelty. The Beta's daughter was tall, sharp-featured, and possessed the kind of beauty that cut like a blade. She was also Calyx Thorn's intended. Or so she told everyone who would listen. I'll get it, Aelith murmured, scrubbing harder. Ravenna's heel came down on her fingers, not hard enough to break bone, just hard enough to grind her knuckles into the stone. Aelith bit her tongue until she tasted copper. Look at me when I'm speaking to you, runt. Aelith raised her eyes. Ravenna's lips curled into a smile that held no warmth. Tonight is the Blood Moon ceremony. Every alpha on the continent will be here. Every unmated wolf will be searching for their fated. Ravenna leaned down, her breath hot against Aelith's ear. And you will be in the cellars, polishing silver, where no one has to smell your pathetic human stench. She released Aelith's hand and straightened, smoothing her silk dress. Calyx specifically requested you stay out of sight. He doesn't want his guests thinking Thornwood keeps defective strays. Ravenna sauntered away, her laughter echoing off the stone. Aelith stared at the blood welling from her scraped knuckles. She pressed her palm flat against the cold floor and breathed. Don't cry. Crying is weakness. Weakness is death. She had lived by those words since she was 6 years old, when the old servants told her the truth about her parents. Her father, a low-ranking warrior named Brennan, had died in a border skirmish before she was born. Her mother, a human woman named Alara, had died giving birth to her. She was an orphan, a half-blood, a wolf who never howled. The Thornwood Pack had taken her in out of obligation. Alpha Aldrich's late wife had been a compassionate woman who pitied strays, but that compassion died with her. When Calyx came of age and took control of the Pack's daily operations, he made his contempt for Aelith abundantly clear. She was tolerated. Barely. Aelith gathered her supplies and limped toward the servants' stairwell. As she rounded the corner, she collided with someone solid. She stumbled backward, her bucket clattering, dirty water sloshing across the floor. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, She looked up and forgot how to breathe. The man standing before her was not Calyx. He was taller, broader, with dark hair that fell across a face carved from shadow and stone. His eyes were the color of a winter storm, pale gray with flecks of silver, and they studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He wore simple traveling clothes, dark leather, no insignia, no rank markers. But something about him made her wolf. No, not her wolf. She didn't have one, made something deep inside her shiver. "You're bleeding," he said. His voice was low, quiet, carrying the weight of someone who rarely spoke without purpose. Aelith glanced at her hand. "It's nothing." The stranger reached into his coat and produced a strip of clean cloth. He held it out to her. She stared at it as if it might bite her. "Take it," he said, "before it stains the floor and someone makes you scrub it again." Aelith took the cloth. Their fingers brushed. A spark of heat shot up her arm, so sudden and sharp she gasped. The man's eyes narrowed. Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Confusion, before it vanished behind a mask of calm. "Who are you?" Aelith whispered. Before he could answer, a voice boomed down the corridor. "Vashan!" Calyx Thorn strode toward them, golden and glowing, flanked by two of his enforcers. He barely glanced at Aelith. She was furniture to him, invisible, but his gaze locked onto the dark-haired stranger with barely concealed irritation. "Brother," Calyx drawled. "I didn't expect you to actually come. Father said you'd probably skulk in some corner of the continent forever." "Brother." Aelith's gaze snapped between them. This was Vashan Thorn? The exiled son? The stories said he'd left Thornwood 10 years ago in disgrace, cast out after some unnamed failure. The servants whispered he'd become a rogue, a wanderer, a ghost. He didn't look like a ghost. He looked like something far more dangerous. "The Blood Moon ceremony only happens once every decade," Vashan said, his tone flat. "I wouldn't miss it." Calyx snorted. "Try not to embarrass the family. Stay in the back, keep your head down, and maybe Father won't remember why he banished you in the first place." Vashan said nothing. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Calyx finally noticed Aelith. His lip curled. "Why is she in the main corridor? Someone get this creature back to the cellars where she belongs." An enforcer grabbed Aelith's arm, yanking her away. As she was dragged toward the servants' stairs, she glanced back. Vashan was watching her. His silver eyes burned with something she couldn't name. Then the door slammed shut, and he was gone. The Blood Moon ceremony was the most sacred event in the werewolf world. Once every decade, when the moon turned crimson and hung low enough to kiss the earth, unmated wolves from every pack gathered to seek their fated. The moon goddess's magic was strongest on this night. Bonds that might have taken years to form could snap into place in an instant. A single glance, a single breath, and two souls would be tethered for eternity. Aelith was supposed to be in the cellars. She was not in the cellars. She crouched in the narrow space between the walls, a hidden passage that the servants used to move unseen throughout the estate. Through a latticed vent she could see the great hall in all its terrible glory. Thousands of candles hung from iron chandeliers, casting golden light over a sea of wolves dressed in their finest. Alpha lords from distant territories stood in clusters, their auras thick with dominance. Unmated females in flowing gowns circled like sharks, searching for the most powerful male they could claim. And at the center of it all, on a raised dais beneath a banner of the Thornwood crest, sat Calyx Thorn. He was resplendent in a black velvet coat embroidered with silver thread, his golden hair swept back, his chiseled jaw lifted with the arrogance of a man who had never been denied anything. Ravenna stood behind him, her hand possessively draped over his shoulder, whispering something that made him smirk. Aelith's chest ached. She didn't understand why. She should hate him. She did hate him. He had made her life a waking nightmare for 15 years. But for the past month, something had shifted. Whenever Calyx walked into a room, her blood warmed. Whenever he spoke, Even in cruelty, her heart stammered. It was as if invisible threads were stitching themselves between them, pulling tighter with each passing day. She had tried to ignore it, tried to bury it, but tonight, the pull was unbearable. Please, goddess, please don't let it be him. A hush fell over the crowd. Alpha Aldrich Thorn rose from his seat, ancient and iron-haired, his presence commanding instant silence. Tonight, we honor the sacred rite of the blood moon, Aldrich announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. My son, Calyx, has reached his 25th year. It is time for him to claim his fated mate and ascend as the true Alpha of Thornwood. Cheers erupted. Goblets were raised. Ravenna's smile sharpened into triumph. But Aelith noticed something else. In the far corner of the hall, cloaked in shadow, stood Vashan. He wasn't drinking. He wasn't mingling. He was watching his brother with an expression that might have been carved from ice. And then, as if sensing her gaze through the walls, his head turned. He looked directly at the vent. Directly at her. Aelith's breath caught. Impossible. He can't see me. He can't. Calyx suddenly stood. His nostrils flared. His goblet slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The hall went silent. Calyx's golden eyes swept the room, wild, searching. His chest heaved as if he'd been running for miles. That scent, he growled, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. Who? Who is that? Ravenna grabbed his arm. Calyx, what's wrong? He shoved her aside, his gaze lifted, slowly, inexorably, to the latticed vent in the wall, to the hidden girl with violet eyes, trembling in the darkness. Mate, Calyx snarled, and the word cracked through the air like a thunderclap. Aelith's world shattered, and somewhere in the shadows, Vashan Thorn smiled. The guards found her within minutes. They didn't ask questions. They didn't offer explanations. They simply tore the lattice from the wall, dragged Aelith out by her hair, and hauled her through the servant passages into the blazing light of the great hall. She hit the marble floor on her hands and knees. The impact sent pain shooting up her wrists. Her servant's dress, gray, shapeless, stained with the day's labor, pooled around her like dirty water. Blood from her scraped palms smeared against the pristine white stone. Silence crushed the hall. 1,000 wolves stared at the creature that had interrupted their sacred ceremony. Aelith could feel their disgust like heat from a fire. She could smell their contempt. Bitter, acrid, suffocating. Get up. Calyx's voice was ice wrapped in velvet. Aelith's arms trembled as she pushed herself upright. She couldn't look at him. The bond was screaming inside her chest now. Mate, mate, mate. A desperate, clawing need that made her want to crawl to him and beg for acceptance. She forced herself to stand. Calyx stood 5 feet away, his golden features twisted into an expression of pure revulsion. His nostrils flared with every breath, as if her scent was simultaneously irresistible and repulsive. You, he breathed. The wolfless runt, the half-blood stray. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Aelith heard the words clearly. Pathetic, disgusting, and impossible. Calyx. Alpha Aldrich's voice cut through the whispers. The old wolf rose from his throne, his iron eyes fixed on his son. What is the meaning of this? A mistake, Calyx spat. A cosmic joke. He stepped closer to Aelith, invading her space, his dominance pressing down on her like a physical weight. Do you feel it, Runt? That pull in your chest? That ache that tells you I'm yours? Aelith couldn't speak. Her throat had closed. I feel it too, Calyx hissed, and it makes me sick. The words landed like a blade between her ribs. You are nothing, Calyx continued, his voice rising so the entire hall could hear. You have no wolf, no bloodline, no value. You scrub my floors, you eat my scraps. And you think, you dare to think? That you could stand beside me as Luna? Tears burned Aelith's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I didn't choose this, she whispered. The goddess. The goddess made a mistake, Calyx roared. The chandeliers trembled. Several Omegas in the crowd whimpered and dropped to their knees. And I will not be bound by it. He turned to face the assembled wolves, spreading his arms wide. Hear me, all of you. I am Calyx Thorn, heir to Thornwood, son of Alpha Aldrich, future ruler of the Eastern Valley. I will not chain myself to a defective, wolf-less servant girl who cannot even shift. Ravenna stepped forward, her smile sharp as a blade. Reject her, Calyx. It is your right. The crowd began to chant. Softly at first, then louder. Reject. 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 Aelith's knees buckled. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't... Calyx seized her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Up close she could see the war in his gaze, the bond fighting against his pride, his wolf clawing at his control. For one fleeting moment she thought she saw something like pain. Then it vanished. I, Calyx Thorn, heir of Thornwood, reject you, Aelith Varn, as my mate and Luna. The words hit her like a physical blow. Aelith screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was something raw and primal, torn from the deepest part of her soul. The bond, barely formed, fragile as spun glass, shattered inside her chest. She felt it break, felt the pieces shred through her heart like shrapnel. She collapsed, gasping, clawing at her chest as if she could hold herself together. I accept, she choked out, because the ritual demanded it, because the agony would kill them both if she didn't complete the severance. I accept your rejection. Calyx staggered, clutching his own chest. But his pain lasted only a moment. He straightened, smoothed his coat, and turned his back on her. Guards, he said coldly. Remove this creature from my sight. Leave her beyond the borders. Let the rogues have her. Calyx, it's the dead of winter, someone murmured. She won't survive the night. Then the problem solves itself. Ravenna laughed. Strong hands grabbed Aelith's arms. She was dragged backward across the marble, leaving a smear of blood in her wake. The great doors opened. Cold air rushed in, biting and merciless. As she was hauled toward the threshold, Aelith's vision blurred. But through the haze, she saw him. Vashan Thorn stood at the edge of the crowd, motionless as a statue. His silver eyes blazed with an emotion she couldn't name. Then the doors slammed shut. And Aelith was thrown into the snow to die. The cold should have killed her. Aelith lay in the snow, her thin servant's dress soaked through, her body curled into a trembling ball. The wind howled through the forest like a wounded animal, and the temperature was plummeting toward a depth that would freeze her blood within the hour. But she wasn't cold. She was burning. It started in her chest, where the bond had shattered. A heat like molten iron poured through the cracks, spreading through her veins, seeping into her bones. Her skin felt too tight. Her skull felt like it was splitting apart. What? What is happening to me? A voice answered. Not her voice. Something older. Something ancient. Finally. Aelith screamed as her spine arched off the ground. Her fingers clawed at the snow, but it melted beneath her touch, steam rising into the frozen air. Her bones began to crack, not break, but shift, rearranging themselves with wet, grinding sounds that should have been agony, but instead felt like release. They caged me for 21 years, the voice growled. They poisoned our blood. They buried me beneath silence and shame. But pain is the key that unlocks all prisons. Who are you? Aelith gasped. I am you. I am the wolf they said didn't exist. I am the truth they tried to drown. Fur erupted from her skin, not gray, not brown, not any color she had ever seen on a wolf. It was white, pure, blinding white, shimmering with an iridescent glow like moonlight given form. Aelith's jaw elongated. Her hands became paws. Her scream became a howl that shook snow from the trees and sent birds fleeing into the night. When the transformation completed, she stood on 4 legs. But this was no ordinary wolf. She was massive, nearly 8 feet tall at the shoulder, towering over any alpha she had ever seen. Her fur rippled like liquid silver, casting its own pale light across the dark forest. Her eyes, once violet, now blazed with molten gold, ancient and terrible and beautiful. Inside the great hall, the celebration had resumed. The music played, the wine flowed. Calyx accepted congratulations for ridding himself of an embarrassment. Then the howl reached them. Every wolf in the hall froze. The sound was not just loud, it was commanding. It bypassed the ears and struck directly at the soul. Omegas collapsed instantly, foreheads pressed to the floor. Betas stumbled, clutching their chests. Even the alphas, proud, powerful, ancient, took involuntary steps backward. Calyx went pale. What is that? Boom! Something hit the great doors from outside. Boom! The hinges screamed. The wood cracked. Crash! The doors exploded inward. Through the wreckage stepped a monster of legend, a ghost made flesh, a creature that had not been seen in 500 years. The white wolf. She lowered her massive head, her golden eyes sweeping the hall until they found Calyx. A growl rumbled from her chest, so deep, so powerful, that the marble floor beneath her paws began to crack. Calyx's goblet slipped from his nerveless fingers. Impossible, he whispered. You didn't have a wolf. The white wolf's lips peeled back, revealing fangs the length of daggers. And then she spoke. Not aloud, but directly into the minds of every wolf present. I have always had a wolf. You just weren't worthy of seeing her. Chaos erupted. Wolves scrambled backward, overturning tables, shattering goblets. Several betas shifted instinctively, only to immediately drop to the ground, their wolves recognizing a dominance so profound that resistance was suicide. Calyx stood frozen, his face cycling through shock, fear, and something that looked horrifyingly like regret. Aelith, he breathed. Aelith, wait! The white wolf snarled, and Calyx's voice died in his throat. He staggered backward, his own wolf whimpering inside him, desperate to submit to the creature he had thrown into the snow barely 10 minutes ago. Alpha Aldrich stepped forward, his aged face pale but his posture still commanding. Everyone, remain calm, the old Alpha ordered. This is clearly some form of dark magic. Seize her, bind her with silver chains before... Touch her, and die. The voice came from the destroyed doorway. Every head turned. Vashan Thorn stood silhouetted against the night, snowflakes swirling around him like a cloak. But he was not the same man who had skulked in corners and endured his brother's mockery. He had changed. His posture was no longer hunched and deferential. He stood straight, his shoulders broad, his presence radiating an aura so thick and ancient that several wolves near the entrance simply collapsed, unconscious. And on his chest, gleaming beneath his opened coat, was a symbol that made Alpha Aldrich's face drain of all remaining color. The crown of ashes, the sigil of the Alpha King. No, Aldrich whispered. It cannot be. Vashan walked forward, his boots crunching over the shattered remnants of the great doors. Wolves parted before him like water before a blade. He didn't look at his father. He didn't look at his brother. He looked only at the white wolf. He stopped 10 feet away from her and slowly, deliberately, lowered himself to one knee. He bowed his head. Forgive me, Vashan said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. I should have revealed myself sooner. I should have stopped this before it began. But I needed to see. His jaw tightened. I needed to know if they had any decency left in them. The white wolf's growl faded. She studied him with those molten gold eyes, and something passed between them. A recognition, A resonance, a thread of fate that had nothing to do with the broken bond still bleeding in her chest. You knew, she projected into his mind alone. You knew what I was. I suspected, Vashan replied silently. Your scent, the way you moved, the way the shadows seemed to bend around you without your knowledge. You carry the blood of the Lunaris line, the original wolves, the ones who ruled before the packs existed. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to awaken on your own. Because power given is never as strong as power claimed. Vashan raised his eyes to meet hers. And because I needed to know if you would survive what they did to you. A queen must be unbreakable. Behind them, Calyx finally found his voice. Vashan, he snarled, stepping forward. What is the meaning of this farce? You are banished. You are nothing. You have no right to wear that sigil or kneel before my... Your what? Vashan rose and turned to face his brother. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of mountains. Your rejected mate? The girl you called filth? The woman you sentenced to death in the snow? Calyx's mouth opened and closed. I am Vashan Thorn, Vashan announced, his voice now booming through the hall. Firstborn son of Aldrich Thorn, though you were all made to forget that. 10 years ago, I discovered a conspiracy within this pack. I discovered that my father had been systematically poisoning any wolf who showed signs of the old bloodlines. Terrified of their power, I tried to stop him. For that, I was drugged, stripped of my memories, and cast out. Gasps rippled through the crowd. But the Alpha Council found me, Vashan continued. They restored what was taken. They trained me. And when the previous Alpha King fell in battle 3 years ago, they crowned me in secret. He turned to the crowd, letting them see the crown of ashes clearly. I am the Alpha King, ruler of all packs, judge of all wolves, and I have returned to correct a great injustice. He turned back to the white wolf. Slowly, the massive creature began to shrink. Bones reformed. Fur receded. Within moments, Aelith stood in human form, naked, trembling, her pale hair cascading down her back, her skin glowing with residual power. Vashan shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders before anyone could gawk. His hands lingered on her arms, steadying her. I have you, he murmured. You are safe now. Aelith looked up at him, her violet eyes still flecked with gold. Why? She whispered. Why would the Alpha King care about a wolf-less servant? Vashan's silver eyes burned. Because you were never wolf-less, he said. And you were never a servant. You are the last daughter of the Lunaris bloodline. You are the White Wolf, prophesied to either unite the kingdoms or burn them to ash. He cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. And because the moment I touched you in that corridor, I felt something I haven't felt in 10 years. Aelith's breath caught. What? Vashan leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. Hope. Behind them, Calyx let out a strangled roar. No, she is mine. The bond. I rejected her. But the bond. I can feel it reforming. She belongs to me. Vashan didn't turn around. Guards, he said calmly. If the former heir speaks again without permission, remove his tongue. 12 figures in black armor materialized from the shadows, the Obsidian Guard, the Alpha King's elite. They surrounded Calyx, their weapons drawn. Calyx fell silent, his face purple with impotent rage. Vashan extended his hand to Aelith. Come with me, he said. Let me take you away from this place. Let me show you who you truly are. Aelith looked at his hand. She looked at the hall full of wolves who had tormented her, mocked her, and starved her. She looked at Calyx, whose eyes now held desperate, selfish longing instead of cruelty. She looked at Ravenna, who was trying to slink toward the exit. Before we go, Aelith said, her voice steady for the first time in her life, there's something I need to do. She walked toward Ravenna. The beta's daughter tried to run, but two obsidian guards blocked her path. She spun, her face twisting into a pleading mask. Aelith, please. I was just following Calyx's orders. I never meant. Aelith stopped in front of her. Kneel. The word wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of command. True command, alpha command, royal command. Ravenna's legs buckled. She crashed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Aelith leaned down. You spent 15 years making my life a hell, she said softly. You ground my fingers into stone. You spit in my food. You told me I was worthless every single day. Ravenna sobbed. I want you to remember this moment, Aelith continued. I want you to remember the way the floor feels beneath your knees, because if I ever see you again, you will spend the rest of your life on them. She turned and walked back to Vashan. She took his hand. Get me out of here, she said. Vashan smiled, a rare expression that softened his harsh features. With pleasure, my queen. They walked out together, leaving the Thornwood Pack in ruins behind them. And in the great hall, Calyx fell to his knees, clutching his chest, howling with a grief he had brought entirely upon himself. Aelith woke to warmth. It was such a foreign sensation that for a moment, she thought she was dead. Surely the afterlife would be the only place where she wasn't freezing, starving, or bleeding. But then she felt the silk sheets against her skin. She smelled cedar smoke and winter pine. She heard the crackle of a fire in a hearth. She opened her eyes. The room was vast, larger than the entire servants' quarters in Thornwood. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panorama of snow-capped mountains beneath a sky streaked with the pale gold of dawn. The walls were dark stone, hung with ancient tapestries depicting wolves running beneath silver moons. The bed she lay in could have held 10 people comfortably, its frame carved from black oak inlaid with silver. Aelith sat up slowly. Her body ached in ways she didn't know were possible. Every muscle felt like it had been shredded and rewoven. The first shift is always brutal, a familiar voice said. Especially when it's been suppressed for 2 decades. Vashan sat in an armchair by the fire, a book open on his lap, though his silver eyes were fixed on her. He had changed into simple clothes, a gray tunic, dark trousers, but the crown of ashes still gleamed at his throat. Where am I? Aelith asked, her voice hoarse. The Citadel of Ashes, Vashan replied, closing the book and setting it aside. My home. The seat of the Alpha King's power, hidden in the Frostspine Mountains where no pack can claim dominion. He stood, moving to a side table where a pitcher of water waited. He poured a glass and brought it to her. You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days. Your body was healing, the wolfsbane they fed you. It takes time to purge completely. Aelith took the water with trembling hands. She drank deeply, the cool liquid soothing her raw throat. Wolfsbane, she repeated. You mentioned that before. They poisoned me? Vashan's jaw tightened. He sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough that she could see the controlled fury in his eyes. For your entire life, he confirmed. Small doses, mixed into your food. Not enough to kill you, but enough to keep your wolf in a coma. Enough to make you appear defective. Aelith's hands began to shake. The glass slipped from her fingers. Vashan caught it before it could shatter. Why? She whispered. Why would they do that to me? Because they were afraid of what you are. Vashan set the glass aside and reached into his coat. He withdrew a silver locket, ancient and tarnished, engraved with a symbol Aelith didn't recognize, a crescent moon cradling a 5-pointed star. This was found around your neck when you were brought to Thornwood as an infant, Vashan explained. The old Alpha, my grandfather, recognized it immediately. He tried to protect you, tried to hide what you were, but when he died and my father took over. Your father ordered the poisoning, Aelith finished, the pieces clicking into place. Yes, My father has spent his entire reign hunting down and eliminating wolves with ancient bloodlines. He calls it purification. He believes the old lines are dangerous, that their power threatens the stability of the pack hierarchy. Vashan's voice darkened. He's killed dozens over the years, entire families. I discovered his crimes when I was 22. I tried to expose him. Instead, he had me drugged, my memories suppressed, and cast out as a disgraced failure. Aelith stared at the locket in his hands. "What bloodline am I?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "The Lunaris line," Vashan said softly. "The first wolves. The ones who walked beside the moon goddess herself before she ascended. They were not just werewolves, Aelith. They were her chosen children, imbued with her divine essence. They ruled the ancient world for 3,000 years. But they're extinct. Everyone knows that. Everyone was told that." Vashan pressed the locket into her palm. The Lunaris were not wiped out by time or war. They were systematically hunted by wolves who feared their power. The last known Lunaris princess disappeared 21 years ago, along with her newborn daughter. Aelith's breath stopped. "Your mother's name wasn't Alara," Vashan said gently. "It was Seraphine Lunaris. She was the last princess of the Moonblood. She didn't die in childbirth. She was murdered, and you were taken to Thornwood by a loyal guardian who hoped to hide you among common wolves." The locket felt impossibly heavy in Aelith's hand. She couldn't say it. "You are the last Lunaris," Vashan confirmed. "The White Wolf, the Moon's daughter. And according to the ancient prophecies, you are destined to either unite all the kingdoms under one banner, or destroy the corrupt packs entirely." Aelith laughed. It was a broken, hysterical sound. "Yesterday I was scrubbing floors. Today I'm supposedly a prophesied queen?" "Yesterday you were in a cage," Vashan corrected. "Today, the cage is broken." He stood, giving her space, and walked to the window. The morning light caught the silver in his hair, and Aelith realized he wasn't as young as she'd first thought. There were lines around his eyes. Scars she hadn't noticed before traced down his neck and disappeared beneath his collar. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Why did you save me?" Vashan was silent for a long moment. "I've spent 10 years hunting my father's victims," he finally said. 10 years gathering evidence of his crimes, building alliances, preparing to take him down. But I couldn't move openly. An alpha king who attacks a pack alpha without overwhelming justification risks civil war. He turned to face her. "You are that justification. You are living proof of his crimes against the old bloodlines. With you at my side, I can bring him to justice without tearing the kingdoms apart." "So I'm a tool," Aelith said flatly. "A weapon for your revenge." "No." Vashan crossed the room and knelt before her, putting himself below her eye level. "You are not a tool. You are a person who deserves justice, training, and the chance to become who you were always meant to be. Whether you choose to help me is entirely your decision. And if I don't? If I just want to disappear into the human world and forget any of this ever happened? Then I will give you gold, documents, and safe passage to any city you choose," Vashan said without hesitation. "You owe me nothing, Aelith. I failed to protect you sooner. If anything, I owe you." Aelith studied his face. She had spent 21 years learning to read people, to predict when a blow was coming, when a meal would be poisoned, when a promise was a lie. She searched for deception in Vashan's silver eyes. She found none. "There's something else," she said slowly. "Something you're not telling me." Vashan's expression flickered. "The White Wolf's power comes with a price," he admitted. "Your wolf is ancient, primal. She has been dormant for 21 years, and now she is awake, and hungry. Within the next lunar cycle, you will enter your first heat." Aelith's stomach dropped. "When that happens, every unmated alpha on the continent will sense it. They will be drawn to you like moths to a flame. Some will try to claim you by force, others will challenge each other to the death for the right to pursue you. And you? Aelith asked, her voice barely audible. Will you be drawn to me too? Vashen's hands curled into fists at his sides. I already am, he said, his voice rough. From the moment I touched you in that corridor, I felt it. The pull, the fire. But I will never act on it without your explicit consent. I am not my brother. I will not claim what is not freely given. A knock sounded at the door. Vashen stood, his composure snapping back into place. Enter. An obsidian guard stepped in, his face grim. My king, we have a situation. Report. Calyx Thorn has arrived at the mountain pass. He's brought 50 warriors. He's demanding the return of... The guard hesitated, glancing at Aelith. His mate. Vashen's eyes went cold. He has no mate here. He claims the rejection was invalid. He claims he has evidence that she was spelled, that her wolf was artificially awakened, that she rightfully belongs to Thornwood. Aelith felt her blood turn to ice. Vashen turned to her, his expression fierce. He cannot take you. Not without your consent, not without a formal challenge. But if he invokes the old laws? What are the old laws? Vashen's jaw tightened. He can demand a trial of possession, a battle between himself and any champion you choose. If he wins, by ancient covenant, you would be returned to him. The fire crackled in the silence. Aelith thought of Calyx's hands on her chin, his voice calling her filth, his cruelty, his cowardice. Let him come, she said, her voice steady. Vashen's eyebrows rose. Aelith, let him invoke his old laws. Let him fight for his property. She stood, and though she was smaller than Vashen, though she wore nothing but a silk robe, power radiated from her in waves. And when he loses, I want him to know exactly what he threw away. Vashen stared at her for a long moment, then he smiled, and there was pride and wonder in his expression. As you wish, my queen. The Hall of Ashes was carved into the living rock of the mountain. Unlike the gilded opulence of Thornwood, this hall embraced its starkness. Black stone pillars rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Torches burned with pale blue flames that cast no warmth. The floor was a mosaic of obsidian and silver, depicting the ancient war between wolves and the creatures that had once hunted them. Aelith stood at the base of the dais, dressed in armor that the obsidian guard had provided. Black leather reinforced with silver steel plates, fitted perfectly to her slender frame. Her pale hair was braided back in the style of warrior queens. She looked nothing like the servant girl who had scrubbed floors. Vashen sat upon the throne of ashes, carved from volcanic glass, its edges sharp enough to draw blood. His obsidian guard flanked him in perfect formation. The great doors groaned open. Calyx Thorn strode in like he owned the mountain. He had dressed for war, golden armor that caught the torchlight, a crimson cape flowing behind him. His blonde hair was swept back, his jaw set with determination. Behind him marched 50 Thornwood warriors, their expressions nervous as they took in the citadel's oppressive grandeur. And behind them, to Aelith's surprise, came Alpha Aldrich himself, leaning on a cane now, his iron hair disheveled, his face gaunt with something that looked almost like illness. The Wolfsbane, Aelith realized suddenly. He's been taking it too, probably to build immunity in case anyone tried to use it against him. But prolonged exposure to Wolfsbane had consequences. It aged the body, weakened the spirit. Aldrich was dying by his own poison. Good. Calyx stopped 20 feet from the dais. His golden eyes found Aelith immediately, and something passed across his face. Hunger, regret, possessiveness all tangled together. Aelith, he breathed. That's Lady Lunaris to you, Aelith replied coolly. Or did you forget my bloodline so quickly? Calyx's jaw tightened. He tore his gaze from her and fixed it on Vashan. "Brother, you've made a grave mistake." "Have I?" Vashan's voice was bored. "Please, enlighten me. You've stolen a member of my pack. A wolf who was bonded to me by the goddess herself. I don't care what tricks you use to break the bond or awaken her wolf. She belongs to Thornwood. She belongs to me. I belong to no one." Aelith cut in. "You rejected me, Calyx. You called me filth. You threw me into the snow to die. The bond is severed. I accepted your rejection. It's done." "You were under duress," Calyx snapped. "The bond wasn't fully formed. You hadn't shifted. By the old laws, the rejection is legally ambiguous. I have the right to reclaim you." A murmur ran through the hall. The obsidian guard shifted, hands moving to weapons. Vashan raised a hand, stilling them. "You invoke the old laws?" he asked quietly. "I do." Calyx straightened, triumph flickering in his eyes. "I demand a trial of possession, combat between myself and her chosen champion. If I win, she returns with me to Thornwood. If I lose, I relinquish all claims." "And you believe this gambit will work?" Vashan leaned forward. "You believe you can defeat any champion she chooses?" "I am the finest warrior Thornwood has produced in 3 generations," Calyx boasted. "I trained under the legendary Gravik Ironclaw himself. I've never been bested in single combat." Vashan smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then you accept any champion she names?" "Any champion? Even you, brother." The hall fell silent. Aelith felt Vashan's eyes on her. She knew he expected to fight. She knew he wanted to fight. To tear apart the brother who had tormented the woman he was beginning to care for. But this wasn't his battle. It was hers. "I choose myself," Aelith announced. The words echoed through the hall like thunder. Calyx's triumphant expression shattered into disbelief. "What? Are you deaf as well as cruel?" Aelith stepped forward, her boots ringing against the obsidian floor. "I am my own champion. I will fight you myself." Calyx laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "You shifted for the first time 3 days ago. You've never trained a day in your life. I could kill you with one hand tied behind my back. Then this should be easy for you." Calyx's laughter died. He stared at her, searching for the joke, the bluff, the trap. He found nothing but steel. "Aelith," Vashan said softly, rising from his throne. "You don't have to do this. Let me—" "No." She turned to face him, and her violet eyes blazed with golden fire. "If you fight for me, I'll always be the weak Omega who needed rescuing. I'll always be the broken thing that someone else had to fix." She lifted her chin. "I'm done being rescued. I'm done being pitied. I'm done being told what I am and what I'm not." She turned back to Calyx. "You wanted to see what you threw away? Here I am. Come and try to take me back." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Aldrich stepped forward, his cane tapping against the stone. "This is madness," the old alpha rasped. "Calyx, you cannot fight her. She is the White Wolf. If you kill her—" "Quiet, father." Calyx's voice was cold. "You're the one who told me she was nothing. You're the one who ordered the Wolfsbane. You made this mess. I'm going to fix it." He unsheathed his sword, a golden blade inscribed with ancient runes. "I accept your terms, Aelith, but don't expect mercy. When I beat you, I'm going to drag you back to Thornwood in chains, and you're going to spend the rest of your life remembering that you could have come willingly." Aelith smiled. It was not the smile of a servant. It was the smile of a predator. "Try." The Circle of Frost lay at the heart of the citadel. It was an ancient arena, carved into a natural cavern deep within the mountain. The floor was solid ice, enchanted to never melt, slick as glass, unforgiving to any warrior who lost their footing. Jagged stalactites hung from the ceiling like the teeth of a sleeping giant. The walls were lined with viewing platforms, now filled with Vashen's court, Thornwood's warriors, and the ever-watchful Obsidian Guard. Aelith stood at the northern edge of the circle, barefoot to better grip the ice. She had stripped off the armor, wearing only the black tactical suit beneath. Flexible, light, allowing full range of movement. A sword had been offered to her, but she had refused it. She wouldn't need it. Across the circle, Calyx rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck. He had removed his cape, but kept his golden armor, confident that his strength and experience would overcome any disadvantage of weight. "Last chance," he called across the ice. "Yield now, and I'll be merciful." "You don't know the meaning of the word," Aelith replied. Vashen stood on the royal platform, his hands gripping the railing so hard his knuckles had gone white. Beside him, Elder Morath, a wizened wolf who served as the Citadel's master of ceremonies, raised his staff. "The trial of possession is sanctioned by the old laws," Morath announced, his voice magically amplified. "Combat ends when one party yields, loses consciousness, or dies. No outside interference. No weapons beyond what you bring. Begin." The staff struck the ground. Calyx charged immediately. He crossed the ice with supernatural speed, his golden sword slicing toward Aelith's neck in a killing stroke. He wasn't holding back. He wasn't playing games. He wanted to end this in one blow. Aelith didn't block. She dropped. Her body slid beneath the blade, the ice carrying her between Calyx's legs. As she passed, she drove her elbow upward into his knee. The crack echoed through the cavern. Calyx roared, stumbling, his leg buckling beneath him. He spun, slashing wildly, but Aelith was already behind him. She rose and kicked the back of his injured knee. He crashed to the ice. "How?" he gasped, struggling to rise. "You trained with swords and strategy," Aelith said, circling him slowly. "I trained with survival. Every beating taught me how to move. Every time someone grabbed me, I learned how they telegraphed their attacks. Every time I was knocked down, I learned how to get back up." Calyx lunged from his knees, abandoning his sword, shifting mid-leap. His golden wolf burst forth, massive, powerful, jaws aimed for her throat. Aelith shifted. The transformation was faster now, more fluid. One heartbeat she was human. The next, the white wolf filled the arena with blinding silver light. Calyx's wolf slammed into her, and stopped. He might as well have charged a mountain. The white wolf stood immovable, her golden eyes blazing down at the alpha who was suddenly, horrifyingly small in comparison. She was nearly twice his size, her fur radiating cold moonlight, her presence so overwhelming that wolves in the audience dropped to their knees unbidden. Calyx's wolf whimpered. For the first time in his life, his inner beast recognized a superior predator. The white wolf's jaws closed around his throat. Not biting. Not yet. Just holding him, his pulse fluttering against her fangs. "Yield," she commanded, the word resonating in his mind. Calyx's wolf thrashed, pride warring with terror. "Yield!" The command hit him like a tidal wave. His wolf collapsed, going limp in her jaws. When she released him, he shifted back to human form involuntarily, gasping on the ice, one hand clutching his undamaged throat. "I yield," he choked out. "I yield." The white wolf stepped back. She shifted, returning to human form with an ease that should have taken years to master. Aelith stood over her former mate, naked, triumphant, steam rising from her skin in the frozen air. Vashen was already descending from the platform, his coat in hand. He wrapped it around her shoulders, his body blocking her from the crowd's gaze. "It's over," he murmured. "You won." "Not quite," Aelith said. She walked toward Calyx, who was still struggling to rise. She crouched before him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You called me defective," she said quietly. "You said I was a genetic dead end. You said I couldn't bear strong heirs." Calyx opened his mouth to speak. "Shut up. I'm not finished." Aelith's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of 2 decades of pain. You never saw me, Calyx. Not once. You looked at me and saw a servant, a runt, an embarrassment. You didn't reject me because I was weak. You rejected me because acknowledging me would have meant admitting you were wrong about everything you believed. She stood. I don't hate you, she said. You're not important enough to hate. But I want you to remember something for the rest of your life. What? Calyx whispered. I could have killed you. I chose not to. That's mercy. She turned her back on him. You'll never get it from me again. She walked toward Vashen, her head high. Then chaos erupted. A scream tore through the cavern. Black smoke poured from the tunnels, unnatural, reeking of sulfur and dark magic. Figures in silver masks emerged from the shadows, their bodies wreathed in crackling violet energy. Vashen's eyes went wide. The Hollow Covenant, he breathed. Everyone, defensive positions, now! But it was too late. The masked figures raised their hands in unison, and a pulse of dark energy rippled through the arena. Every wolf collapsed. Obsidian Guard, Thornwood warriors, even Vashen himself, clutching his head as the magical assault scrambled his senses. Only Aelith remained standing. The leader of the masked figures stepped forward, pulling back his hood to reveal a face that was both ancient and ageless, handsome in a terrible way, with eyes that burned like violet embers. At last, the man said, his voice silken with malice. The Lunaris heir reveals herself. We've been hunting your bloodline for 5 centuries. Your mother escaped us. You will not. He raised his hand, chains of dark energy materializing from thin air, snaking toward Aelith. Time to come home, little moon. Your power belongs to us now. The chains wrapped around Aelith's wrists before she could react. They burned. Not with heat, but with cold. A supernatural frost that seeped into her bones and dulled the fire of her wolf. She gasped, falling to her knees as the dark magic worked to suppress what had only just awakened. Magnificent, the leader purred, circling her like a collector admiring a prize. The white wolf herself. Do you know how long we've waited for this moment? How many of your ancestors we've hunted only to watch them slip through our fingers? Who are you? Aelith gritted out, fighting against the chains. I am Malachar, the man replied, spreading his arms wide. High Priest of the Hollow Covenant, we are the true inheritors of the Moon Goddess's power, not the mongrel wolves who diluted her bloodline through centuries of breeding with lesser creatures. Your bloodline, the Lunaris, were guardians of her divine essence, and that essence belongs to us. Around the arena, his masked followers were binding the fallen wolves with enchanted chains. Several approached Vashen, who was struggling to rise, blood dripping from his nose. Leave him, Malachar commanded. The Alpha King is useful as a hostage. The others are disposable. You'll never get away with this, Vashen snarled. The Pax will unite against you. Every Alpha on the continent. Will do nothing, Malachar interrupted. By the time they realize what's happened, the ritual will be complete. I will have consumed the Lunaris power, and I will be unstoppable. He turned back to Aelith, cupping her chin with cold fingers. Your mother fought too. She had such spirit. I enjoyed breaking it. Something inside Aelith cracked. You killed her, she whispered. You killed my mother. I consumed her, Malachar corrected. Just as I will consume you. Her power was insufficient. She had already transferred the bulk of her essence to you while you were in the womb. But now, after 21 years of that power fermenting inside you, ripening, he inhaled deeply. You will make me a god. Aelith's vision went red. The chains tightened, sensing her rising fury, pumping more suppressive magic into her system. But something strange was happening. The cold wasn't stopping the fire anymore. The fire was eating the cold. What? Malakar's eyes widened. The chains around Aelith's wrists began to glow. Not with violet energy, but with pure, blinding white. Cracks spread along their surface like fractures in ice. Impossible, Malakar breathed. The binding should be absolute. No wolf can— I'm not just a wolf, Aelith said, and her voice echoed with something vast and ancient. I'm the daughter of the moon, and I'm very, very angry. The chains shattered. Light exploded from Aelith's body, not the silver glow of her wolf, but something deeper, more primal. It was the light of the moon itself, pure and merciless. Malakar staggered backward, throwing up his hands to shield his eyes. "Kill her!" he screamed. "Kill her now!" His followers attacked. Aelith didn't shift. She didn't need to. The power pouring through her was beyond wolf, beyond human, beyond anything the world had seen in 1,000 years. She raised her hand, and a wave of moonlight erupted outward, catching the first wave of Covenant attackers and hurling them against the walls with bone-breaking force. Two more rushed her from behind. She spun, moving with a speed that blurred the eye, her hands finding their throats. Light pulsed from her palms. The masked figures screamed and dissolved, their forms crumbling to ash. "What are you?" Malakar shrieked, scrambling backward. Aelith walked toward him, her feet leaving glowing footprints on the ice. Around her, the cavern itself seemed to respond to her presence, the stalactites humming with resonance, the ice cracking and reforming into crystalline patterns that pulsed with lunar energy. She was not walking. She was ascending. "You wanted the Lunaris power," Aelith said, her voice layered with harmonics that weren't entirely human. "Here it is." Malakar hurled bolt after bolt of dark magic at her. Each one struck her and evaporated, consumed by the radiance that surrounded her like a halo. "My mother died protecting me," Aelith continued, still advancing. "She gave me everything she had, her power, her love, her hope that one day I would be strong enough to end what you started." She stood before Malakar now. He had nowhere left to run. "This is for her." Aelith placed her hand on his chest. Light poured into him, not to heal, but to purify. Malakar's screams echoed through the cavern as 5 centuries of stolen power, dark magic, and corrupted essence burned away. His body convulsed, his mask crumbling, revealing a face that aged 100 years in seconds. When Aelith removed her hand, there was nothing left but dust. The remaining Covenant members fled into the shadows, their leader destroyed, their cause obliterated. The light around Aelith slowly faded. The power receded, settling back into her core like a tide returning to the ocean. She swayed, exhaustion crashing over her. Strong arms caught her. Vashan. The magical suppression had broken with Malakar's death, and he had fought free of his captors in time to reach her. He held her against his chest, his silver eyes wild with awe and fear and something softer. "I have you," he murmured. "You're safe now." Aelith looked up at him, her violet eyes still flecked with fading gold. "Did I do it?" she whispered. "Is it over?" Vashan smiled, tired, bloody, but warm. "It's over." In the ruins of the arena, wolves were stirring. Thornwood warriors looked at the ash that had been Malakar, then at the woman who had destroyed him, then at each other. The power they had just witnessed was beyond anything in living memory. Kalix sat against the wall, unchained but unmoving, staring at Aelith with an expression that had moved past jealousy into something like awe. "She really is the White Wolf," he breathed. "She really is." No one answered him. No one needed to. 1 month later, the world had changed. The Hollow Covenant was shattered, its remaining members hunted down by a coalition of packs working together for the first time in centuries. Alpha Aldrich Thorn had been brought before the Council of Alphas, where evidence of his crimes, the murders, the poisonings, the systematic suppression of ancient bloodlines, was laid bare. He was stripped of his title, his territory, and his freedom. He would spend the rest of his days in a stone cell, slowly succumbing to the wolfsbane that had already rotted him from within. Calyx had renounced his claim to Thornwood. The pack was dissolved, its wolves absorbed into neighboring territories. Rumor said he had gone rogue, wandering the northern wastes alone, haunted by what he had thrown away. Ravenna Cade had vanished entirely. Some said she fled to the human world. Others said she hadn't made it that far. And at the Citadel of Ashes, a coronation was taking place. Aelith stood on the highest balcony overlooking a valley filled with wolves. They had come from every territory on the continent, alphas and betas and omegas, warriors and healers and elders, drawn by the news that the Lunaris bloodline had returned. She wore a gown of silver and white, woven with threads that shimmered like moonlight. On her brow sat a crown of pale crystal, the crown of moons, retrieved from a vault where it had waited for 500 years for a worthy heir. Beside her stood Vashen, his hand interlaced with hers. The bond between them had formed slowly over the past month, not the instant, overwhelming compulsion of a fated match, but something deeper, something chosen. Every conversation, every shared meal, every quiet moment by the fire had woven them together until the connection was unbreakable. "Ready?" Vashen asked softly. "No," Aelith admitted. "But I'm done waiting to be ready." She stepped forward, and the crowd below fell silent. "I was told I was nothing," Aelith announced, her voice carrying across the valley. "I was told I was weak, defective, and worthless. I believed it. For 21 years I believed that I deserved every blow, every insult, every night spent hungry and cold." She paused, letting the words settle. "I was wrong. And so were they." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I am Aelith Lunaris, daughter of Seraphine, last of the Moonblood. I am the White Wolf. And I am not here to rule over you." She lifted her chin. "I am here to stand beside you, to fight for the weak, to hold the powerful accountable, to build a world where no child has to suffer as I suffered." She raised her hand, and moonlight gathered around her fingers, visible even in the daylight. "I am your queen, and I will make them all kneel." The roar that rose from the valley shook snow from the mountain peaks. Vashen squeezed her hand. "My queen," he murmured, and there was pride and wonder and love in his voice. Aelith looked out at the sea of wolves, her people now, and smiled. The runt was gone. The servant was a memory. The queen had risen. If you loved this story and want more tales of rejected mates, hidden royalty, and enemies who learned too late what they threw away, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.